There is a coup attempt against Keir Starmer happening right now as we speak, and it follows reports of another separate coup attempt back in September against Keir Starmer by Andy Burnham that time. Now, Starmer has been flying around the world, visiting different countries and hiding from the problems that he's created in Britain for us all. But now his own MPs are taking it out on him, plotting against him to have him removed as Prime Minister and have some other Labour Member of Parliament take charge. And in this video, I'm going to explain exactly what's going on with this coup, whether or not it has any chance of actually getting rid of Starmer, and why Labour are screwed either way. Now, Starmer has been absent from the media recently. He hasn't really been in the news at all, and instead other Labour ministers have been doing their front-facing roles. We've had Rachel Reeves running her very own press conference outlining her inevitable tax raises, not Starmer. We had David Lammy as Deputy Prime Minister, sat in the Houses of Parliament, answering questions on behalf of the Prime Minister. We had Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary, who was facing the heat around the BBC scandal. And all of this is really because Starmer's been in Brazil on the climate conference, running away from everything. Now, Labour have been suffering pretty much across the board, but Starmer has sort of just been a little bit forgotten about. And he's also been out of the limelight, which seems to have been the important aspect which sparked the move for a coup to launch against him, especially in light of the impending massive tax hikes, along with the already horrific approval ratings for Starmer and Labour as well. So let's take a look at the details of this coup. Starmer's allies issue warning to Prime Minister's rivals as fears grow over leadership challenge. Number 10 is said to be in full bunker mode over fears of attempts to oust him after the budget or the May local elections. Downing Street has launched an extraordinary operation to protect Keir Starmer amid fears among the Prime Minister's closest allies that he is vulnerable to a leadership challenge in the wake of the budget. Starmer's most senior political aides warned that any attempt to oust the Prime Minister over tanking poll ratings would be reckless and dangerous move that could destabilise the markets, international relationships and the Labour Party itself. They insisted that Starmer would fight to retain the leadership in any contest that followed a challenge, either immediately after the budget or, more plausibly, following defeat at the May local elections. A bitter row has broken out after number 10 sources said that they had grown increasingly concerned over speculation among MPs that Wes Streeting could be planning an imminent coup against the Prime Minister, a move fiercely denied by the Health Secretary. And in a sign of how anxious some in number 10 have become over Starmer's position, senior figures said they had been told that Streeting had 50 frontbenchers MPs willing to stand down if the budget landed badly and the Prime Minister did not go. Now, cabinet ministers told The Guardian that Streeting was just one of several Labour figures who were on manoeuvres, quote, for the leadership should a vacancy arise, but that none of them were likely to move against Starmer. They interpreted the Downing Street intervention as a stop-Wes strategy that was designed to warn off any punitive rivals for the leadership, who MPs say also include Angela Rayner of all people, Shabana Mahmood and even Ed Miliband. Number 10's gone into full bunker mode, turning on their most loyal cabinet members for absolutely no reason. A circular firing squad won't help the government out of the hole we're in. So a coup isn't quite coming yet, but MPs are really seriously considering this based on the almost inevitable at this point pivotal failure by Starmer to trigger the actual coup itself. Now, the initial expectations for when this coup might come to fruition and actually fully launch could be from two separate times. Either from the budget, which is coming in just a couple of weeks in November, if, say, the markets panic, if gilt yields spike, if the cost on our debt across the entire country goes up because investors have no, faith in the country. Or if the tax rises look absolutely insane, the media jump on top of Labour and Starmer even further, and their polling craters even more, well, that could potentially be the first trigger for this kind of coup. Or equally, it could be with the local elections, the council elections next year in May. If Labour get hammered like they did in the smaller collection of local elections earlier on in the year, well, Labour MPs could also take that as a precursor to a further stronger electoral defeat at the next general election, and they could then launch the coup instead to try and get rid of Starmer in a vain attempt to hold the Labour Party together. Now, after this, Wes Streeting came out and basically said that he is not planning a coup at all, but he also refused to rule out standing against and opposing Starmer at any point in the future. On Wednesday, he said it was totally self-defeating for people to brief against him, not least because it's not true, but also because it's not helpful to the Prime Minister. He told Sky News, "I do think trying to kneecap one of your own team when they are out, not just making the case for the government, but actually delivering the change that we promised, I think that is also self-defeating and self-destructive behaviour." Asked if local elections in May, which are predicted to go badly for Labour, could be the point he launches a bid, he said, "Well, I'm not planning for us to do badly." He said, "I support the Prime Minister. I have done since he was elected leader of the Labour Party. I didn't vote for him in the leadership election, but I did support him the moment he was elected, and I supported him all the way through at points when he did things that no one thought was possible." So Wes Streeting is basically trying to act like Labour are sort of a united front and that he and Starmer are actually on side despite not speaking in the wake of this coup attempt, and that really it's the media and it's the smaller members of Number 10, for example, who are pushing this narrative, trying to sow division and hate in between the Labour Party to get them to fall apart. Number 10, on the other hand, and Starmer's staff, they are briefing the media that this is merely a pragmatic choice that Labour MPs have to make, and that it really isn't an ideological thing. It's just a case of Starmer's sort of already in power, you might as well keep him there because it would be bad if you were to be seen as fratricidal and murdering your leader like the Tories do so often. The Prime Minister's supporters are telling Labour MPs they should be careful what they wish for. They argue a leadership contest would plunge the party into the chaos associated with the final years of the Conservative Party's stint in office, which came to an end last year, and install a leader who does not have their own mandate from the country. They are trying to convince their colleagues that a contest could destabilise the international markets too and would jeopardise the good relationship the Prime Minister has established with President Trump. But others, including some ministers, fret about what they perceive to be the desperate position the government is in. It's terrible. He is hated out there. It is worse than it got under Corbyn. I don't see how this is sustainable until May, one minister said. Now, there are actually some really close similarities between what we're seeing right now with this potential coup with Wes Streeting trying to take over from Starmer and the similar sort of coup we saw back in September as Andy Burnham tried to do the same thing. It's actually incredibly similar. It started off with a left-wing Labour member who is pretty well known about but is also pretty unhappy about the failings of the Labour government and isn't happy with the centrist target that they've done and gone for on things like immigration policy. That left of Labour MP or politician then thinks that the reason Labour Party is so unpopular is that they actually aren't left-wing enough and that they would be a better Prime Minister than Starmer. They chat and they plot amongst other far-left Labour MPs and politicians and councillors, trying to gather up as much support and work out a time or a plan to actually launch a coup. But of course, these left of Labour politicians, this time Wes Streeting, in the past Andy Burnham, they are incapable of organising themselves. They accidentally leak the plans of the coup, Starmer and the media find out, and then the coup is exposed to the country before the plotters really had any kind of chance to actually prepare and get things ready for real. They're then forced to say that they don't want a coup because they aren't in any position to actually launch it. They say that they support Starmer, and then the coup fails before it even starts. It is a little bit ironic how we've seen this happen literally twice over the course of the last 2 months, both from these left of Labour politicians being unhappy at Starmer being too centrist in their mind and thinking that they are the magic pill. Now, can a coup actually happen? Well, the process for the Labour Party to replace Starmer is actually very risky and not easy to pull off at all. They need 20% of Labour MPs, sitting MPs, to support a specific rival candidate to replace Starmer as both Labour leader and Prime Minister. They've currently got 405 Labour MPs. That means they need 81 members of Parliament to plot together and support one single alternative. Then, if that happens, the Labour members, everyone who pays their 50 quid a year or whatever it is to be a member of the Labour Party, they all get together, probably somewhere in the region of 250,000 eligible voters, and they vote on either Starmer or the opponent, in this case potentially Wes Streeting. The problem is that to get 81 separate MPs to collude with each other in secret without the truth getting out is just incredibly difficult. The rumours from this one here is that 50 MPs have colluded with one another and they've all agreed to get rid of Starmer only if the budget is a complete disaster and the markets panic, but that's still only 50 and that isn't a firm commitment from them. The issue is, as they gather more support, it's just more and more likely that there will be a weak link somewhere and the details will get out, and then Starmer will be attacked by them firmly. And we know that the left is already in shambles and they just can't organize very well, so that's incredibly difficult for them. If, however, they did manage to get this together and 81 MPs all pushed together to replace Starmer, Starmer would likely lose any Labour leadership election at this point. We have some polling back from September based on Andy Burnham standing against Keir Starmer. Again, the previous coup attempt was by Andy Burnham. Andy Burnham would beat Sir Keir Starmer among Labour members by 2-1 if there was a leadership contest today, an exclusive poll for Sky News reveals. A poll of 700 Labour members taken a week ago, this is back in September, found that 62% would back Mr Burnham and 29% would back Keir Starmer. Just 9% don't know or would not vote. So if it were between Andy Burnham and Starmer, Starmer would definitely lose. I think it's incredibly likely that the same would be true for pretty much anyone seeking to challenge Starmer at this point. I haven't seen anyone release any up-to-date polling on Starmer versus Streeting or Angela Rayner or any other Labour politician over the last few weeks, but just considering how unpopular Starmer is across the country and how unpopular he's been in the previous polls amongst Labour members, it seems incredibly likely that he would lose any Labour leadership election. What's actually likely to happen next, though? Well, unfortunately for Labour, and I guess fortunately or unfortunately for the rest of us, depending on how you see it, there isn't really a single figurehead for the rebels to support. Some people are suggesting that Angela Rayner is going to come back basically from the dead after being forced to resign in disgrace about 1 month ago for dodging taxes. She is now somehow expected to come back and fight Starmer off. Some people are suggesting that Shabana Mahmood could replace Starmer because she's supposedly tough on immigration, which is obviously a lie. And then there are even people suggesting that Ed Miliband, the man who actually lost Labour an election about 10 years ago, is going to come back, come to power, become Prime Minister undemocratically, and then lead the Labour Party going forward. Of course, in September, during that coup, we saw massive speculation about Andy Burnham, but that is pretty unlikely because he isn't an MP. He would have to stand down as the Mayor of Manchester and then get elected as an MP before he could even run for leader of the Labour Party. If it is Wes Streeting on the other side, he's actually not that popular or that charismatic, but there's another big problem with him, and actually with every single potential alternative to Starmer for the Labour Party. At the next election, there's a very high chance that Wes Streeting, for example, loses his seat altogether. This here is the details of the last general election for Ilford North, which is where Wes Streeting is a Member of Parliament. It's basically in North London. Here are the details. 15,600 votes for Labour, 15,100 votes for a minority party. In this case, it was an independent. He won this election by just 500 votes in 2025 during Labour's supposed landslide victory. Currently, the predictions are backwards. They put, if an election were to happen today, according to electoral calculus and their collation of all MRP polls, they expect this to be the case. 22% of the votes for Labour, 29% for an independent candidate, with a 56% chance of the independent candidate winning and just a 23% chance of Wes Streeting holding onto his seat. There is a 77% chance that if there were another election shortly, Wes Streeting would lose it. So electing him as leader of the Labour Party is a very odd decision indeed. Who would the winner of this specific constituency be? Well, it's a Gaza independent called Liane Mohammed, who really only cares about two platforms: Palestine and pushing for more immigration and immigrants' rights. Electoral calculus again has Wes Streeting at a 77% chance of losing his seat, so putting him in charge of the Labour Party is definitely a risky move. And here's the big problem for Labour. Starmer is politically toxic, but truth be told, all senior Labour politicians are at risk of losing their seat at the next election. Here is the details of what an election would look like if it were to happen very recently. This is the most recent MRP poll. You can see a sea of Reform light blue, a bunch of Lib Dems, and a little bit of Reds in these deep, metropolitan elite areas like London and Liverpool, and a few Tories scattered out as well. But here's what electoral calculus had to say about Labour cabinet ministers who are at risk of losing their seats to either reform, but actually including 2 independent candidates as well. Rachel Reeves, Yvette Cooper, Shabana Mahmood, Ed Miliband, Pat McFadden, Wes Streeting, John Healey, Bridget Phillipson, Liz Kendall, Lisa Nandy, Hilary Benn, Douglas Alexander and Jonathan Reynolds. Almost every single Labour minister is at risk of losing their seat at the next election. The same is true for the Conservatives as well. James Cleverly, Ian Duncan-Smith, Mel Stride, Kemi Badenoch, Suella Braverman, Jeremy Hunt, David Davis, Robert Jenrick, Rishi Sunak, Priti Patel. I don't even think I can name another famous Tory minister or ex-minister at this point who isn't on this list, and the same goes for Labour as well. So actually, Keir Starmer's almost the safe option for Labour at this point because he's pretty firmly going to hold on to his seat, so at least there won't be that massive embarrassment at the next general election where he loses his seat. Now, of course, 81 MPs is a very large number needed to actually kick off this coup fully, and is unlikely to happen without a very strong catalyst. In my opinion, the only real options for a catalyst here is some kind of huge scandal that implicates Starmer directly in something illegal, like, massive amounts of tax dodging like Angela Rayner had, for example, or a complete destruction of Labour councillors at local elections in May. The reason that would be so destructive for Labour and so likely to kick off a massive panic amongst MPs is that local councillors are usually the main volunteers and main canvassers for general elections, so they're incredibly important for future electoral prospects. And if you lose a lot of your councillors, which Labour are almost certainly going to lose come May, well, that's going to be really, really damaging for their next general election prospects as well. The other option then is some kind of complete economic meltdown during the budget later in the month. I actually don't think this is that likely. Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer, all they've been doing for the last month is telling us that tax rises are coming, so the markets are starting to price it in and investors are already leaving the country. There's not going to be a sudden shock when Rachel Reeves now announces that massive tax rises are coming, because we already know that massive tax rises are coming. So I don't actually expect that to be a strong enough catalyst to kick off this coup. Labour's problem here, though, isn't actually Starmer, it's Labour itself. Yes, Starmer is uncharismatic, he has an annoying voice, he refuses to answer questions, and he's just not a likeable person at all. Yes, he's an ex-human rights lawyer who cares more about illegal immigrants than British people, but that's not just Starmer, that's not unique to Starmer in the Labour Party, that is the Labour Party. None of them represent British people, all of them would also crater in the polls if they were in Starmer's position, and all of them would get destroyed at the next election as well. That's it for today. Of course, as usual, if you want to help the channel out, do me a favor and share this video with a friend, a family member, or a co-worker. That's the best way to help me get this channel to grow. If you want to tell me to cover a certain thing or tell me I'm wrong about something, leave a comment down below in the description. I always try and read all of the comments, and subscribe for more videos in the future. Labour are letting out violent criminals onto our streets. Not just the odd one every now and then, but actually 40,000 since they came into power last year. And somehow that isn't a scandal. And no one really seems to care about Labour's early release scheme letting out 40,000 criminals early, except for the fact that the purposeful release of 40,000 criminals has now led